I needed to get what was in my head and in my heart and what I desired. I needed to get that translated to a team and then equipping the team and empowering the team so that we could experience what we wanted.
Hello and welcome to the Remarkable CEO Podcast, a show dedicated to chiropractors who want to transform their job into a business so that they can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. With your hosts, Dr. Pete Camiolo and Dr. Stephen Franson.
What's up, Remarkables? Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. I'm Dr. Stephen Franson.
And I'm Dr. Pete Camiolo.
Hey, we're super excited, as always, to come alongside you on this journey. And man, what a journey it is, right? Every season seems to get more and more interesting. What a privilege it is for us to be connected with you guys so regularly and on such an intense level. Man, and just speaking into you today, we're psyched to bring you some content. Dr. Pete, I'm going way back for this, so I use this phrase all the time, right? So I say, you don't get what you want, ... And it's followed by usually some other statement. And you know what? This was actually original content. This is the first 4 posts I ever put when I put out my original blog in coaching, 10 years ago, called The Third Bird, right? So I don't know if any of you guys go way back, that far back with me, but The Third Bird blog, that was from an expression. Listen, you're a chiropractor. Everybody knows the expression, you get 2 birds with 1 stone. As chiropractors, 2 birds are not enough. We needed to find the third bird, right? So in our practice, it was always like, we need to figure out what's the third bird here, right? So that was actually the name of my original blog. And my original blog, which was just extraordinary. Going back, the first 4 blog posts are actually what we're going to be talking about in this series, right? And it's, you don't get what you want, you get what you measure. You don't get what you want, you get what you reward. You don't get what you want, you get what you model. And you don't get what you want, you get what you tolerate. Dr. Pete, I'm psyched to kick this material off. It's as relevant today, if not more so, than it was 10 years ago. And what I think you'll find is when you hear this content, when you hear this material, when you get this message, you'll be using this expression very regularly, just like I do.
I love this subject. And Dr. Stephen, you and I were chatting about this before we started this podcast here today. First of all, hey guys, good to be together today. So happy to be a part of the journey with all of you. It's just been awesome for me, Doc, to receive feedback from docs who are listening to our podcast and hear about how this has been a blessing in their life, and they really love the podcast. So thank you for all of you who do tune in and listen to our podcast regularly. We say consistency is the new intensity, right? So thank you for being consistent. Also, just encourage you if you would be willing to also share this with a colleague. What I found is actually listening to podcasts is a big part of my success strategy for me personally. I have several different podcasts I listen to. This is one of them on a weekly basis. And so if this is something that you found value, please consider to share it. Please do share with them, especially as this series, I think we kick off a series. This is a really good series to introduce someone to the Remarkable CEO conversation that we've been having for a couple of years now in this podcast. So I'm going to go ahead and say this. So that's what I want, right? I want more and more chiropractors to be able to experience having a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life. But I don't get that, right? If I don't have a measure of what does it mean to actually achieve that, like what is the outcome that I'm trying to create? So there's nothing wrong with wanting. Like we talk about the wish list, we talk about the wants and the wishes and all these things. And it's like, hey, those things they're good to articulate. It's great to get that out there, but it doesn't translate. It doesn't turn into anything. And so, we appreciate all of you. And what we want is that we want, more and more chiropractors to have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, but wanting isn't enough. So there's very specific things that have to happen to get anything done. You can have a chiropractic practice and throw up a shingle, and you can want your whole community to get chiropractic care, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen, right? So as we all know, there's things that have to be done. So this podcast, what I like about this podcast, Doc, and about this series that we're digging into today, this is about action, right? So there's going to be some very specific actions that are going to be coming out of this podcast series these next 3 episodes. So tune in to all 3 of these, at least, if I can encourage you to do that. Because again, just by the end of this series, because when we engage with our coaching clients, who we get to see their world, and they invite us in there, and we're grateful for that. It's an awesome journey. Is we often are talking about these things. It's the measure. You don't get what you want, you get what you measure. You don't get what you want, you get what you reward, you get what you celebrate. And you recognize. You don't get what you want, you get what you model. You don't get what you want, you get what you tolerate. These things keep coming up in our CEO conversation. So we know that this is a conversation that needs to be had in this platform right now. So, and I also think, Dr. Stephen, that the timing of this is spot on. We're in North America, we're in the fall, we're getting into, we're going to be, Q4, we're going into the winter season of business. So you're assessing. Remember, we talk about plan, prepare, execute, assess. So if you think about it in the landscape of time of a year, we're moving towards the assessing time, because you're reflecting on the year and you're preparing for the next year. So this is a really good time to think about yourself from a leader's perspective, and to really take some time to think about, what are we measuring? What are we rewarding? What are we modeling? And what are we tolerating? And let's do a deep dive and assessment of your business during this series, Dr. Steve. I'm excited to be digging in today.
Yeah, Dr. Pete, I'm excited for anybody who's a first-time listener, because they're going to get some real gold out of this conversation, right? Because ultimately, it's our job description as a CEO. One of our bullet points is to be vision caster, right? So it's not just vision creator, it's not vision host. That was you as the owner operator. For you to make the ascension to CEO, you have to become the vision caster, right? So let's think about that. You've got to be able to cast the vision, right? And the vision is very often an outcome, right? So, or a set of outcomes, right? So when, you don't get what you want, outcomes, you get what you measure, right? So ultimately, what we're going to talk about is, you don't get what you want, you get what you reward as well, associated with what you're measuring. But here's the key to this: as vision caster, okay, this is all about communication, right? So if you're the owner operator, you can be the only one in the house who's actually got clarity around the vision of what success looks like. Where are we going? What's a win look like? Right? So what's important here, right? So you can actually have it all in your head, and you hire a bunch of people to sort of support you while you do all the things that make all the stuff, right? So it's like, that's owning a job and having a team that just simply works for you and is your support team, right? So we're making the ascension to CEO, which means that we're going to surround ourselves with A players. We're going to be delegating to them, right? We're going to have the right person, the right role, doing the right work the right way. We've got to be able to delegate to them a set of roles and a set of responsibilities that go with the role that they're best suited for, right? Right person in the right role. There's a function that's going to have a set of responsibilities organized underneath that function. And we put the right person in that role, and we're going to trust them with that function. And we're going to delegate to them the activities that are organized underneath that function. CEOs, I hope you're following me right now. Okay. So in order for them to be able to execute against those responsibilities, execute against those expectations and agreements, we've got to be able to communicate to them what's important here and what does a win look like, right? So I hope you're picking up what I'm putting down here. Vision casting gives you the ability to say, listen, this is what's important here. These are the outcomes we are looking to achieve in the next 12 months, right? So this is exactly what a win looks like. These are your responsibilities. This is what I expect from you. You're going to execute these responsibilities remarkably. And this is what that looks like. Here are your goals, right? So your goals, because each one of these outcomes is measurable, right? So we have a measurable outcome, which is a KPI, but you know what? You can't do an outcome, okay? You do the activities that drive the outcome. So we want to make sure that we are clear with them what the activities are that will produce the outcome, the desired outcome that we're measuring. Guess what? Those activities are also measurable. So you measure those activities and you let them know what success looks like for the activities. So is KPIs associated with that? So now they have total clarity. They're looking at this being like, okay, I understand what the downstream outcome needs to be. This is the output from my responsibilities. I understand that all these responsibilities or activities are measurable. Those measurables or KPIs or key performance indicators. Now I know what success looks like as far as those are concerned because you gave me goals. Now what you've done is you've communicated to a person, these are the outcomes that we're looking for. These are the responsibilities that you have, that you're accountable to produce those outcomes. And this is what success looks like. Dr. P, this is helping us accomplish the most incredibly difficult thing to do as a leader, which is to convey to our people, this is what matters here.
Yeah. I mean, you spoke directly to something that I was immediately thrust into a memory of the owner operator Pete, the CEO Pete, and the difference, and how, and you said this really, and it was exactly the way it was, which was I was the host, right? I was the host of the vision. I'm the host of the vision. And most of it was actually in my head. And that's a big issue. And that actually became why I was successful as an owner operator, but I would have been stuck as an owner operator forever had I not discovered that the issue was I needed to get what was in my head and in my heart and what I desired. I needed to get that translated to a team, and then equipping the team and empowering the team so that we could experience what we wanted. We could experience what we wanted, not just me. And it was that transition, and it got very granular. Okay. Because what you realize is that there's a lot of things to measure, because there's a lot of details things that have to happen to get what you want ultimately. And so what I realized as, journeying through it, as you were talking, I was immediately thrust back into the first 3 years in practice. I was immediately thrust back there and said, I remember so clearly, like, that is exactly how it was. I was a host. It was in my head. I tried to get it out, but it was mostly inside. And the biggest transition between being an owner operator and a CEO is I now walk into a situation with the team, and I actually show up with questions to see what is going on and what's in your head and what's going on in your world, so that I can make sure that I'm continuing forward with us, versus the other way around, where everybody had to show up and wait for me. And if I wasn't there, the meeting wouldn't begin. As a CEO, the meeting goes on, and if I show up, I just, where's my seat? Like, I'm just going to sit in the meeting and then I'll participate.
Yeah.
It's a very different way.
Flows to you, not through you, right? So
yeah. So it's a completely different. So just remember, as you transition to becoming the CEO, as you now operate as a CEO, many of you are doing that, and you're doing it well. How do we get better at this? Well, again, we've got to get back to the fundamentals. Number one is that this is the groundwork. We're laying the groundwork right now for getting what you want. Okay. We're laying the groundwork. And this is about, so the first thing I want to talk about, Dr. Stephen, is communication, right? So it is about communication. Casting vision is a communication. You communicate that. And so you communicate what matters most, right? So we communicate what matters. So whether I'm talking about your team or you're talking about to a patient, you communicate what matters, right? So we tell people this is what matters, but that's not enough. If I tell a patient, you need to make all your adjustments, and then leave it at that, and we don't have a slip and check in place, and I don't have a progress report where I can go over, hey, Steven, so we're 12 visits in. Well, we should be 12 visits in. We're actually 8 visits in. Here's the thing, Steven. When we first started, remember I told you, you need to make all your adjustments? Well, you're batting, you're 2 out of 3, basically, every week. So
and this ain't baseball.
How's that going? Yeah. How's that going for you? And the reality is, if we didn't not only set an expectation, but my team was measuring it, I could have caught that. I would catch that week 1, right? That gets caught week 1. I'm not waiting till it's week 4, or even worse. Hey, we're not even doing progress checks. I'm not waiting to the end of the plan, or even worse, I'm not waiting till this person went MIA. They're gone. I don't know what happened. What's going on with my practice right now, right? So what ends up happening is things can get real sideways really quickly if we don't get this down. So number one is we communicate what we want. We communicate that what's important. What are the things that matter the most? Let's communicate that. The second thing is now we need to begin to measure that. So I'll give you a great example, and then I want to throw it over to you, Doc. So I'm going to keep it to the patient for now. So if I want more testimonials, right? I think chiropractic is amazing. I know people's lives are transforming, but we don't know, like nobody's telling us that. We are getting it somewhat, but we're not really capturing it. Well, guess what? You don't have testimonials because you're not you want testimonies, but you're not measuring them. You're not putting a mechanism into place, a system to actually create this outcome. So I want testimonials. I believe testimonials are important. So in order for me to get testimonials, I communicate that with my team. Now I need to say, okay, let's start measuring testimonials. All right. So what's our goal, team? Well, I think we could and should be able to get one testimony a week. What do you guys think? Right? We start thinking about this. We do some math. We start thinking about how many patients we have. We start thinking about that. Let's come up with a number that we should be able to do. All right, cool. Is that enough? No, it's not enough. It's not enough simply to say we could get one a week. All right, let's do it. No, what do we need to do next? Well, what are the behaviors that actually help us to get testimonials? Well, we can start making a list of those. And now we start making a list of behaviors. Now those behaviors then become other things we can measure. And now those things can actually live somewhere, like maybe on someone's scorecard. Like, hey, we're going to ask people at every progress report about their results. And we were going to ask them, have you given us a testimony? And would you be willing to share your testimony with us? Would be one great spot to start. Hey, every 12 visits for the first 4 months, we got 3 opportunities just baked into a system just to simply ask people, hey, would you be willing to share a testimony? Do you have a testimony? Do you have a testimony you want to share? Would you be willing to do that? Can we do that today? Can we do it on Thursday? Right? So now we've got something in place where now all of a sudden we start getting testimonials. Now, many of you have done these types of things successfully in your practice. I'm using that as an example because I know in my office, as an example, we loved getting testimonials, but it wasn't enough to want to get testimonials. It had to be something that became a measurable. So it began to live on some place. So that's how it made it to the scoreboard. And you'll see it lives at the top of the scoreboard. 2 of the things that I love the most live at the top of the scoreboard. The number 1 and 2 things, reviews and testimonials. Why are they at the top? Because they're the most important. I love them the most. I think they're really, really important. And a lot of stuff has to happen to make sure those things are happening. So in order to get what you want, number 1, you have to communicate, number 1. And then the second step is then we need to start to measure it. And then once we start to measure it, now we do the third thing, which Dr. Stevie talked about. We create KPIs around behaviors, performance, things that we perform that drive the outcome, performance indicators. These are the key things to do to get that outcome. And that's to measure those activities so it increases our likelihood that we're actually going to hit that. And that is what measuring looks like. So you can pick it for any outcome that you want in your practice. Every outcome that you want in your practice needs to be communicated. It needs to be measured. It needs to be behaviors need to be managed so that we can actually get that out there. That's what this is about. Okay, let's take a quick break and talk about Chiro Matchmakers.
Chiro Matchmakers will help you find the right person for the job. If you're looking to hire the ideal chiropractic assistant, Chiro Matchmakers will help you find the specific person missing from your team so that you can get back to using your talents to serve more people. Or if you're looking to hire the ideal associate doctor, CMM can help. Chiro Matchmakers helps chiropractors like you find the ideal associate doctor to unlock your practice potential and get you the freedom that you desire. To learn more, go to chiromatchmakers.com.
It's conversion, retention. Day 1, 2, 3, that's conversion. Day 3, 4, and beyond, that's retention. Retention begins at conversion.
Coming to these seminars is literally changing the way that I practice.
I mean, the coaches are absolutely incredible. The information that we've learned, we just resonate with so much.
Things are just clicking and we're able to do more and serve more patients, and it just keeps getting better and better.
Retention is based on goals. You're going to be their Sherpa. You're going to be their doctor. Real doctors help people achieve their goals. Say hell yeah.
I think it's very important for the doctors to bring their entire team. They push you, and that's why I choose to invest to bring my team to the immersions, because it stretches you beyond where you are in practice. Everyone beats the same drum coming away from the immersions.
It's like going to the top of the mountain. Once you've been there, you have a whole different perspective.
I feel like I'm leaving here with a set of tools and a process to how to get from point A to point Z.
Energy is everything, and you go back to our lives on Monday morning with a clearer vision and a clearer purpose about exactly where we're going. Who's with me, guys?
I've grown so much just every immersion I've gone to.
It is making me feel more calm and more at ease and more confident in what I'm doing every day.
And now let's jump right back into our conversation.
And here's a point I don't want people to miss is the simple act of measuring it communicates. And that's the power of the measurement effect, right? So whether we're talking about a team member or whether we're talking about a patient, right? So CEOs, you're over the top of this whole thing. So you got to recognize that this is a cultural thing. CEO, our job is to set culture, right? So a cultural thing, the way we run the business, whether we're talking about for our team or for our patients, we got to recognize that the act of measuring is a communication. So yes, we need to tell the story. Yes, we need to cast the vision for our team, educate our patients, what have you. But what gets measured is what matters. That's what people are picking up on, right? So Dr. Pete, back to your patient example of somebody's missing appointments, right? So we have to articulate to them in the very beginning that, listen, for you to get the results you want, don't miss or change your appointments, right? So here's the deal. If you keep all your appointments, you get our best work, you're going to get the best results the fastest. If you miss or change appointments, you're going to sabotage your case and interfere with our work, and you're going to slow everything down. You're going to be frustrated. We're going to be frustrated. Everybody loses, right? So keep your appointments, don't miss or change them. That's casting the vision, okay? That's telling them what success looks like. But then you measure it, right? So you want to make sure that as the doctor, or as the CEO, as the doctor, you're actually getting that information flowing to you. You're not looking for it. It's not a blind spot for you. It's got to be built like we had it built right into our EHR where you could see that a person was being compliant to the care plan, right? And I would call the patient over and I would point and I would show them, look, Pete, I have visibility into your compliance, right? So I would reinforce with them the importance of rhythm and compliance and not missing and changing. And then I'd say, so how do you think you're doing? So, and then I would point and I'd say, here's the deal. This is how you're actually doing. And I would show them using this great color-coded system that, you know what, you were scheduled for 3, you came for 2, for example, right? So, and I'd say, see those black marks, see those blue marks, those black and blues, that's you missing your appointments, right? So this week, and the patient would have a holy crap moment, right? They'd be like, oh my gosh, doc, you have visibility into this? And that's when I would tell them, look, Pete, I'm a great chiropractor. I'm a terrible magician. You actually have to show up here and get adjusted for us to get the work done, for us to get the results you're looking for. That's an example of you don't get what you want, you get what you measure. And what you're doing is you're communicating through that measurement to the patient. Listen, this is what's important here, right? One of the things that's very important is your compliance. Like this is a partnership. Chiropractic's a done with you, not a done for you program, right? So this is what that looks like. This is how it manifests. It communicates to people, this is what's important here. From a clinical perspective, if you're focused on orthopedic exams and neurological packages, right, just like every other specialist or doctor that they've seen in their whole life, and you talk about those things and you focus on those things and you do progress exams and re-exams and you're focused on the traditional neurological and orthopedic, it's not that those aren't important, but they're not going to differentiate you in the marketplace, right? They're not going to teach the patient, listen, what's important here? You can do your packages, but you want to be communicating the unique examinations that you do here. When you're doing heart rate variability, like so when you're the only doctor that has ever done that to. When you're doing a postural evaluation, bilateral weight scales, you want to, when you're talking about the cervical curvature, right? So when you're talking about the flexion extension views, and when you're telling them, this is what we're measuring, you're telling them this is what matters here, okay? So at the end of the day, what you measure communicates to the patient, this is what's important here. And you don't get what you want, you get what you measure. Dr. Pete, it's so critical that we see this and we focus on not only what are we measuring, but are we communicating and are we putting energy on it, right? And whatever you put energy on, wherever energy goes, energy flows. So that brings us to the second part of the communication, which is you don't get what you want, you get what you celebrate.
Yes. Yeah. A couple of things I just want to circle back. Then I want to go into the celebrating and the rewarding is you have to have mechanisms in place to capture what you're measuring. This was a struggle. And this is a struggle, I think, for a lot of chiropractors in general. It's like, you'll say, hey, let me see your stats, let me see your numbers, let me see the stuff. And a lot of times that's a pain point. That's a missing piece. So I just want to give a quick, shout out to our Remarkable Practice Academy and the Vault, because there's so many amazing resources. If you guys are not using the resources in the Vault, all the tools that we've given you to measure and track key metrics, key performance indicators, not only measure them, but also understand what they mean and then how to influence them. You got to take advantage of these things. They are absolutely critical for your team. Your team desperately needs that. So CEOs, I'm talking to you now, specifically, equip your team, give them the tools that the resources that they need to be able to track the things that measure or that matter, so that you can keep measuring and keep your eyes on that, and they can keep their eyes on it, so they feel empowered. That's the quickest way to take the wind from someone's sails, is give them a bunch of stuff to do, but there's no way to really track it, and then we're not following up and following through on that. So that's really difficult.
It's such an important point, Pete. I just want to double click on what you just said there, is because we're not asking the doctor to track this. We're not asking the CEO to track this. CEOs, you have information flowing to you. This is what your team is for, right? So your team, if they have mechanisms in place and reporting systems and meeting rhythms in place, then you have that information just flowing to you, so that you can focus on either leadership of your team or being present with your patient, right? This is where our time, energy, and focus needs to be. Not like looking for metrics, trying to figure out what's going on, wondering what's happening in our practice, stressing, having anxiety, having blind spots, telling ourselves stories, living on assumptions and fantasies, right? So instead of spending our time like going to try to figure out and find out what happened or what's happening, you shouldn't spend any time on that. All this data should be flowing to you. So now you're leading both your team and your patients from an informed place. So I hope you guys heard what Pete just said there, is that these are systems for your team to implement, so that you have the information flowing to you, so you can focus on leading and being present with your patients.
Yeah. Doc, even as we're talking about this, you and I, we're literally opening up a little door, and we could go so deep into this, but I know we need to just leave it there for now. But guys, here's the thing. This is the part A. You don't get what you want, you get what you measure. Part A, conversation. Part B is you don't get what you want, you get what you reward. Okay. And you reward, you celebrate, you recognize. So those are really kind of three things there: is reward, celebrating, and recognition is rewarding, right? So how do we reward people? I want to speak to this. I want to give a confession here, because I know that this has been an area where historically for me, I struggle with this. So maybe some of you can relate with me. Maybe some of you CEOs, this is an area, it's a blind spot. Maybe it's not a blind spot, you're aware of it, but it's still a struggle, even if it needs to be done. But I struggled with this, which was, recognizing people, celebrating the behaviors, the outcomes. It worked really well with managing my patients, not so well with team. Patients would say that, they're feeling better and all this stuff. And I'd be like, go ahead and stand on up. Let's go back to the nervous system chart. I think you're a little off here. I just want to, because as soon as they said that, I'm like, this is their last visit, so I'd immediately stand them up and be like, let's go to the nerve chart. Let's go look at your x-ray. Remember, how long did this take to get there? Like I was so focused on reminding people we have not arrived. It is a journey. And I loved my patients, so they genuinely knew that. So I knew I could get away with it, and I was their doctor. So they kind of like having like somebody who was pretty firm as a doc, who it was business and they knew it. Like I was in the business of saving lives. They felt it. So I got away with the Dr. Steven on that side. I'm not going to say that it was, I could have done better. Confession. I know that I could do better with really celebrating patients. But again, that's why we put mechanisms in place for testimonials and things like that. So we did. And I used to step out when someone told me an amazing thing, and I would step out of my adjustatory room into the hot seat area, and I would say, and I would get the approval from a patient. I would say, hey, Steven, could we tell everybody, like, there's a bunch of people here, and I think they would love to hear, like, you're officially off all your medications. Like, so like he would come out and be like, Steven, tell him. And I'd be like, hey, everybody, need your attention just for a minute while you're warming up, and boom. And then Steven would tell us thing. And he would say, when I first started here, boom, I was taking 3 medications for heart and stuff like this. And I've been going to my cardiologist faithfully and regularly and working with Dr. Pete and the team here. And I officially I'm off all my medications. I got my most recent blood work. It's been amazing. I just showed to Dr. Pete, and I just wanted to just thank you guys. And I'd be like, guys, can we give it up for Steven? Isn't he like, check this out, guys? And boom, boom, boom. And then I'd be like, I have everyone's attention. So this is my moment. And I'd use that next 30 seconds to drive the understanding deeper about the power of the adjustment in chiropractic and the lifestyle, and say, guys, all of you, how many of you right now have at least one person in your life who struggles with heart disease? How many of you have that in your family? Show of hands. How many of you have heart disease and runs in your family? You've had that said to you. You've had that communicated. You have an uncle, a brother-in-law, a mother, a father, a kid. So boom. And I would say, guys, how many of them are regularly receiving chiropractic checkups and getting adjusted? And I would say, guys, before all of you leave today, please see the front desk if you have somebody that you know. Actually, you know what? Front desk, can you guys come on out? Can you walk through this area and just start handing people cards? Boom. So you see what that is? So what did that do? I'm telling a story, Dr. Steven, because and literally this is what we did in my practice. So I was a hard line guy with the patients. I needed to reward my team better. That's what my confession.
Yeah.
is.
Before we drift into team, I got to go there because I didn't know we were going double black belt today. So that was freaking ninja, right? So here's where chiropractors fall down, so they'll hear that and they'll be like, okay, so when people talk about they feel better and their symptoms are improving, whatever, they'll give them the Heisman, right? They'll stiff arm it and be like, oh, we don't talk about symptoms here, or anything like that. I'm like, don't do that. Please don't do that, right? So this is an and conversation, not an or conversation, right? It's not, we either talk about philosophical, vitalistic, nerve system based chiropractic, or we talk about symptoms and correction. And that's, this is Dr. Pete, you know exactly what I mean. We see this everywhere in chiropractic, right? So it's a complete fumble. This is an and conversation, guys. Celebrate that, high five them and hug them, and ready, we're going to go double black belt on this. Celebrate the behaviors that led to that win. This is what you have to double down on, right? So in that moment, you give them the high five, you give them the hug, the squeeze, and receive it, right? And then give the credit to them. Okay. This is when you say, Dr. Pete, you know what? I just want to remind you, or I should say Pete, so you recognize I'm talking about patient. Pete, I'm so happy to hear that, man. Isn't it awesome to see your body's capacity to heal? Isn't it amazing to see how much health you have? Remember I told you have all the health you need inside of you, and we're just going to let it out. First, I just want to recognize you, man. Thank you for being such a great patient and giving me the opportunity to do my best work for you. Man, you've been so great with your adjustment schedule. You're breaking your bad habits, you're adding your exercises. I know how committed you are to your care and your healing. And it's amazing to me, even today, after 26 years, it's amazing to see that your body responds like that already. We've only been working together for 3 months, 3 years, 13 years. I don't care what it is. Isn't it amazing to see how your body has responded already? It's amazing that your body is responding already. That word is critical, right? So, we've just begun. Can you imagine how strong and how healthy you're going to be after this year? Imagine in 2-3 years of chiropractic care, right? So I'm future pacing them, right? So what am I doing? I'm giving them credit. I'm giving their body credit. I'm elevating their awareness how awesome the body is and what's actually doing the healing, right? So making sure that they understand that it's their compliance to their care plan, breaking their bad habits, adding their exercises. I'm giving all of the credit back to them. Here's the truth, doc. They're already giving you all the credit. The beautiful thing here is credit is infinitely divisible. Always give credit away because there's always plenty left over for you, right? Push it back to the patient and highlight the behaviors that are leading to the outcomes and recognize how awesome they are. And make sure you use the term already because we've just begun.
So good. I love the double black belt. So guys, did you catch a couple of things? This is like, there's some deep stuff going on here. Number one is, did you recognize that while Dr. Steven was celebrating my results, he also was embedding within the celebration, recognizing the behaviors that we measure in this office that drive outcomes. So the 3 legs of the stool were actually hit on, because when a patient begins, we teach them that these are the things you need to do to get what you want, right? We teach them the things, the 12 things they need to know to be healthy. We teach them the 3 legs of the stool, which is their part. They're upholding, that's their part of the deal. And then we're going to do our part of the deal, right? So we both have all of us are accountable to our part, you know? And so did you see that he did that? He recognized in the celebration of the win that I had, you reinforced, okay, through the words, the positive affirmation and speaking it, the credit there, the measures that we were measuring and we are measuring, we will continue to measure, because those are the things that you don't stop doing the things that you did to get you where you are now. You're going to keep doing those things. And so that was ninja, because so think about this, the measure, that's why we actually wanted to talk about measure and reward at the same time, actually, I think is because of, without knowing we were going to go down this path, but it's precisely why. So let's just flip the script. I want to talk about the team. So how do you do this with the team? How do you celebrate and recognize the team, your team, right? The people that you work with, because this is really, really important, guys. And again, like I said, this is an area where I had I struggled, I had blind spots, and the reason why was mainly because you know, I was pretty focused on just continuing to do bigger things, and I was not easily impressed. I was not very satisfied. I was not content. And, you know, I had, there's other issues of lack of maturity and things like that, that definitely, you know, I could say, you know, I needed to grow in there, and I needed to, you know, grow in those areas. And so I think we always need to understand that we're all on the journey. All of you CEOs, let's just be real. Hey guys, we got some growing up to do. We got some growing to do. And this was definitely an area where, you know, I needed to have some maturity, to really be able to slow down enough to say, Stephen, Mary, whoever you are, hey, I just want to take a minute, and guys, I just want to take a minute and I want to highlight something, small stuff, guys. Don't wait till it's the, you know, end of the year and it's Christmas. You know, May, middle of May. It's just, hey, I want to, guys, I want to pause the team meeting here, and I want to recognize or end the team training. Hey guys, before we wrap today's training, I want to take a minute. I want to talk about something that I saw this week that I just was absolutely incredible. Mary, so the other day when we received that phone call from that patient, blah, 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 right? So right there, what did I just do? I paused and I would say, okay, I want to recognize, Mary, there was a patient that called in who was actually calling in to cancel their appointment. And the only reason why I know about this is because I later talked to the patient and they let me know something that Mary did that was just so impactful. It meant so much to them. And I just want to say, hey, I want to recognize you for going above and beyond, for really taking the time to meet with that patient, find out what was really going on with them, because that's really what they needed to hear. And because you did that, they rescheduled their appointment, they made it in, and they just went through the report and they signed up for care, and they're bringing their family in. And it's all because you took a minute to say, you know what, this is a human being on the other side of this line who's calling in, who's canceling, but really I found out what was really going on. And as a result of that, their life is transformed. So I want to recognize, but can everybody, you know, let's give Mary a big bear hug, rah, you know, and next thing you know, it's like, so it's that, guys, it's the little stuff. It's also the bigs, but it's the littles that go a really long way. And we have to be really mindful of that at all times.
So, you know, Pete, I think this is a great place to wrap on, right? Because, you know, I'll be the first one to admit that, I walk with a limp here, right? So I used to drag a dead leg behind me on this one, right? Because, you know, I'm blessed with a critical spirit, right? So that makes me a really good doctor. It makes me a really good entrepreneur and a business owner, but it makes me a tremendous pain in the ass, right? So it's like, I'm sure, you know, you've probably picked up on hints of that over the years, right? And it's just my commitment to excellence like yours. And like you said, you're not easily impressed, and you have a set of expectations that are the fruit of our commitment to our mission, right? It's to our purpose. This is like, of course we do that. Of course we're on purpose. Of course we're on mission. And I have an expectation of excellence, you know, around me and of myself. I'm most critical on myself, right? And I know you personally are the same, right? So that's our nature, and that's how we grew up. But truthfully, you know what? As a leader, as a CEO, you're not allowed the luxury of a bad moment. You got to hear that. You're just not allowed the luxury of a bad moment. Doesn't mean you have to be perfect, right? You didn't just hear me say, now you have to be perfect. No, you don't. But you just don't get the luxury of saying, you know what? I'm sorry. It's just having a tough day, having a bad moment. It's just like, you know what? That just doesn't erase everything. When you're the leader, people see and hear everything you do. You just have to recognize that, right? So you have to take on the opportunity and therefore the responsibility to lead from a higher place. And that higher place would be one that would be energizing to your team, not draining the energy. And what Dr. Pete, what you're talking about here is recognition and celebration, right? So you don't get what you want, you get what you celebrate, right? You don't get what you want, you get what you reward. So you've got to be really intentional about this. You've got to recognize that it's like, okay, so instead of letting this reaction of a critical spirit dominate my communications, whether that's facial expressions, tone, or what you say or don't say, and make it really intentional and deliberate to catch people doing things right. You've got to be able to catch people doing things right. And that means the behaviors that lead to those outcomes that we want, the behaviors that we're measuring that lead to the outcomes that we're measuring, right? So you've got to catch people doing things right. So this is how we're going to communicate to people. This is what's important here. We'll catch people doing the behaviors that lead to those outcomes that we desire, right? So you don't get what you want, you get what you reward. So make sure that you're seeing that in your tone, the things you say, what you say, when you say them, how you say them, and just replace or displace that critical tendency and build a habit. You can rehabituate, right? So you can create something that you guys know, synaptogenesis. You can retrain the way your body reacts and responds to situations. You can just take a beat. You can take a breath and recognize that you're hardwired for a reaction, but God gives us this ability to take a beat, to take a breath and just pause. That's just maturity as a leader. Take a breath and ask yourself, what should I do or say here that will strengthen this situation? That may break down a process or a procedure or a scenario, but build up a person, right? So this is an opportunity for us to say, let's get into the habit of catching people doing things right. And that way we can offset or displace the tendency to be super critical all the time. You'll get into the habit. Next thing you know, you do this so often, you habituate it. This just becomes part of your nervous system. And I'm really proud to say that there's been a great evolution here. I think I see it in you. I definitely know it in myself is this has been something that has been a lifelong pursuit to just build the habit as a leader of saying, I see that, I saw that. This is you living out our core values. This is exactly what needs to happen to make sure that we are working together as a team. We're cohesive. I saw that. This is an example of that. And do that publicly so that the rest of your team sees it or the rest of the practice sees it. It works for your team. It works for your patients. Truthfully, it works at home as well for your kids and your spouse, right? So this is a lifelong journey, gang, as we become better leaders. We're going to give you these rules, and hopefully these will be echoing in your head this month as you listen to this series. You don't get what you want. You get what you measure. You don't get what you want. You get what you reward.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, direct message us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Now go and be remarkable.